Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Micks Mowers. I've got my little Riley boy here today. He's on his second week of Easter half term, and today we're going to be having a look at the little tiny Homelite generator one more time, which is I had it apart in the first video, which you would have seen, but I did pick up.
Okay.
It's already open, mate. I already opened it.
What's inside?
It's a little tiny fuel pump diaphragm. Part number for this is, I think, it says 7 times 9 W0017010000 diaphragm. This is the correct fuel pump diaphragm and gasket set, but I slightly damaged when I took it apart because it was stuck together. There was some dirt in the fuel pump, and I wanted to clean it out and put the diaphragm and gasket in there so it's done. But the parts for that are becoming a little bit obsolete. It is a Yamaha engine in there, so that may help you in your searches for it. But I did struggle to find this part, and this is new old stock part as well. But you can get them from America, but they are quite pricey to get it shipped over, so just bear that in mind. If this is the first time you're watching Micks Mowers, hit the subscribe button, whack your bell, set notifications to all. That way you'll be told when I've done a video, or two on my satellite with the live stream, which starts at 6:30 PM UK time. So without further ado, let's get down and dirty and let's try and put this generator back together and try and get it to run. Oh, lovely. Okay, so generator's back on a bench. It's been about 3 weeks since I last worked on this, and I've got my new gasket and diaphragm setting for the fuel pump, as I say. So I've got to remove this gasket off here. This is one I slightly damaged just there when I took it apart, just there. So that's got to come off. That'd be just for a little Stanley workshop knife. Now I have got photographs of this already, which I took prior to removing. So I've got to clean this one off. A lot of dirt in here, and I've also got to clean inside here as well. This diaphragm was well knackered, so clean all this off as well, and then I can then put this diaphragm gasket set back together. So let me get it cleaned off. I'll come back to you in 2 ticks, and then we can then start to slowly rebuild this machine again and hopefully get it running. Okay, I believe that now to be clean. Got the gasket off of this one, and that's where the diaphragm goes on. So let's get the new one out. So this was actually quite pricey for what it is. I don't mind telling you, I paid 25 quid or £24 for this, which is quite an expensive diaphragm and gasket set. However, it should recover that later on down the line. So I've got my gasket to go on. That'll go on like so, that way down. And I've got my diaphragm, which will go on here, and that'll go on that way with a little tiny film facing upwards. That'll go on like that, and then with your spring and cup, that'll then go on like that and sit there together. And then you just put all that together. You can put this diaphragm or this gasket, if you want, over top. It's going to go that way, like so, like that. Make sure that's central. And then you can then put this piece on top of that, and then screw that down with the 4 screws that are supplied, or come off the pump. So let me get it put together, and I'll be back in 2 ticks. Okay, got the fuel pump now all fitted together. That's all done. That was a bit fiddly, to be fair, but yeah, we got it done. So now all I want to do is that goes round that way with this nut facing out. And it's got to sit on these 2 little tiny screws, just screw ports here, and then this piece here, down here, will sit on this little tiny lug just here. Okay, so just offer it into place. Which will go there, and like I say, this little tiny lug here will sit all the way down here. You might lift it up a touch, just to get it to seat. In it goes. Oh, nearly. Right, that's it. And then that then holds down with 2 screws that go into there and there. Don't remember which screws they were. They don't look very long. I'm going to go for you 2 Fat Boy Slims. I'll go for them too. So this is a problem you face when you work on machines and it's a project and you have to wait for parts. This is quite a common problem, is remembering which part goes where. And I do actually have a video of it, which I can refer to. But I'm going to screw these down. I seem to remember one of these being an absolute pig, which is this one here, to get that off. That's what I seem to remember. And as long as the threads wind down, which that one is, I think. Possibly not. That might be the wrong bolts for that. I don't go too mad, it is aluminium cast. Let's try one of you. Let's try you. Yeah, I think that's all. Yeah, that's all day long. So little tiny bronzy colour bolts are the ones that fit in there, not these black ones. Oh, space is so limited, especially with my sausage fingers. So we'll screw that down. Nice and tight. And that's the fuel pump now reassembled. It's been fully cleaned and stripped out. So that's good. We're happy with that. And now when you operate the throttle linkage on the other side, that will now turn the fuel pump down the bottom here. You'll see that move down the bottom. That's now turning that as it should do on that linkage. So that's all correct. We know that works. So next thing I want to do is I want to get the fuel tank up and just give the fuel tank a good swill with some clean petrol, because there's a lot of dirty petrol in there. So I'll do that off camera, just get the fuel tank out, which is on the floor, put some clean fuel in, swill it, so that's nice and clean. So I know where we're going with that. I'll be back in 2 ticks. Okay, so that's all in place. I say the fuel tank's been swilled out now, and you have to disconnect this orange pipe which goes on the highest pipe there. You have to pull this orange pipe out, slip that behind the pump, I think. Put my head in the way, yeah, behind the pump, and then the tank will then sit down in its place. Just make sure it's lined up the top, which it is. That then sits into place, and then you can then hook up this this orange pipe onto the top hole, and then this little tiny pipe here, that goes onto the bottom one. Okay, so I managed to get that fuel pipe on in the end. In the end, I had to change it out for a newer style clamp on there, because I couldn't get the old one on it. It wouldn't have it. So that's been fitted there, and that clamp's been fitted there. I've got another hose just here to fit on the carby. This is all carburetor related, and then I've got a hose up the top here, which will fit on this breather pipe just hither. So what I'm now trying to do is now try and fit this, I believe, looking at my bits and bobs that I've got, try and fit this to the back of the machine onto there, and then we can slowly start to reassemble it and get the carburetor fitted. So let me get it into position to where it's not going to fall off and damage anything, and I'll come back to you in 2 takes very, very soon. A quick note, before we put the tank all the way in, you've got this pipe that comes off of the bottom of the fuel pump. It comes up, and that's got to go in between all of this lot, round, and that sits on the back of this tank. There's a little tiny breather pipe for it, just to snug into. Around the back here, right on the very, very top, that goes onto there, okay? Once that's in place, we can then push the tank into place. I might have to reroute that pipe, because that pipe's going to pinch on there. So let me take that off again. I want to reroute that so that goes behind the throttle control lever. Or it's going to pinch, and then it can come up and go on the back. That's better. And there's a rib in that tank for that to sit in. Little tiny rib. Get that to sit in that rib out the way, and then that tank will then sit up into place. What's a nice sound, hearing kids playing. Not heard that for a while, with the old doodad floating about the place. It's a lovely sound. Kids playing in the garden like that. They can now sit in. Has that gone in? It's got to be sat up a bit more. like that. There you go, so that's gone in there. Right, so that's now gone in, and that breather pipe has now gone in behind the back of that tank, and it's free. Okay, so that one goes from the bottom all the way up round and sits in the top. Okay, once that's in place, you've then got this hose here, this thin one coming off of the pump. That goes onto the engine where the carburetor sits. It's a little tiny breather pipe just here. That sits on that one. And this one here will sit on the bottom of the carburetor inflow, which I shall show you in a minute. So that's that bit done anyway, it's in place. It was confused me where this one went because the cable had bent down, the pipe had bent down. I was getting a bit confused. So yeah, up, round and on the top, and then we'll move on to the next step. So I can now fit the carburetor, that goes into there, onto there, and then I've got a couple of Phillips screws. just noticed I've made another mistake. Someone beat me up today. I've not even been drinking, that's the thing. Carburetor back off. Did anyone spot the mistake? Because I did. It just dawned on me. I haven't hooked up my throttle linkages. Word. Right, so throttle linkage goes onto the throttle arm just up here. You tip the carby down, tip it over, and then you've got a little tiny spring, which also has got to go into that hole first, I think. Let's hook that little spring up. I hook the spring up, that's gone in, and then slide the governor arm into it as well. Like that's all on. I want to hook up this little tiny manifold pipe onto the manifold. That goes onto there. That one goes onto there. Working carburetor throttle, that's working. Air box to go on. Goes into there. Like that. Oh, there you go. That's it. And then we can then put them screws in. We've got a pipe. Oh, that's right. That's good. Got a little pipe jammed in the back here somewhere. All right. So now, governor arms all on. Oop. Come on, baby. That's it. Work with me. Why am I going in? Okay. All right, that's it. Screw that down. Screw that one down. Right, that's carby now in place. Linkage all linked up. Doing as it should do. Happy with that. Inlet vent done. Bottom of the fuel line's now hooked up as well. That's all good. So now, for the 15,000th time, pull cords out. I can now try and slip this panel back onto here. That's no easy thing. I've got a fuel line, a throttle cable to bring around as well. It's right in the way. Oh, I do make this well done. Let's bring that up and over. Oh, we've got to sit in there somewhere. I'll come back to it later on. Right, so now, there it goes. That's come into place. That's into place. We like that. I can now hook up my fuel pipe onto there. Let's loosen that off slightly. Give it a push at the same time. It goes on. So that's all on there. We've got to then got to put this fuel line onto there. There it goes. That's all on. Good. We're happy with that. So now I'll put the 4 screws back in. I'll be back in 2 ticks. Okay, front cover is now on. I'm not going to lie, it was an absolute pig. But there's some little tiny guides underneath each side. It has to go underneath this tray to slide forward onto the generator. Okay, once it's in place, there's 4 screws to do up, easy peasy. But getting that to fit was quite difficult. Okay, so I now have hooked up the throttle, and I will say you need to have a friend like Willy Wonka with some Oompa Loompas in there, because that was not easy. I had to use a pair of forceps to get hold of a throttle cable in here to put it into the housing, whilst another pair of forceps to bring it into a throttle control. It was particularly difficult, people, but it's not something you can't overcome. Took me around about 5 minutes and a lot of swearing to get that in, but now you can see here the throttle now works. I'm not quite sure if that's set 110% correctly yet. I need to figure that out, and I may have to do some adjusting. I don't think it's a million miles out, but hey ho, it's what it is. So that's now done. I can now put my HT lead back on. I need to put that fuel pipe back up again as well, because that had to come off whilst I was mucking about with that fuel line. Oh, this has been an absolute labour of love, without a doubt. It's no wonder there's not any videos of how to do these. I've looked on the internet, and there's only 1 or 2 videos of this, but it doesn't show you how to take the carburetor off. So that all works. Happy with all of that. What I'm now going to do is I should probably not put this back cover on, so I want to check for fuel leaks and what have you. I'm going to put some fuel inside this tank, check for fuel leaks, all that sort of good stuff before I even consider firing it up. So yeah, fuel in, check for fuel leaks, and then I'll come back to you in 2 minutes. Okay, that's been standing now for about 4 or 5 minutes. Fuel tank's about half full. Now there may be no fuel up through yet, because obviously it's got a new pump in there, all that sort of good stuff. So we're going to go for a fire up. It might take a while just to get fuel up through. So let's turn it on to choke. Still no fuel at the minute. We'll see. Let me come on the other side so you get a bit of a better view of it. You can bring you around. Pull cord around the other way, isn't it? Let's bring it down to about there. That'll be about right. Right, so let's turn the switch on. There is oil in the machine, as you said in the previous video. Choke on. Let's see what happens then. HT lead on. Come on, baby. So it's running, green light on. Yeah, volts all the way up. No oil light on. No fuel leaks at the moment. That's quiet too, that's really quiet. Grab a device to plug in. No hunting. I want to get nice and warm because I want to take the oil out eventually and give it a service. Cool. So that'll work. Make sure we can shut it off, which we can as well. Absolutely over the moon. Let's turn it back on. Let's see if it starts without choke this time. Look at that. Absolutely chuffed to bits. Okay, so that's your Homelite HG600. I think it's also called a lightning bug as well. Same machine they have out in America. Powered by a nice sort of Yamaha Japanese engine, and they're built for reliability as they are. You know, they're fantastic. Rates out of 10 for working on them. 10 out of 10, absolute pig. But it's what it is. The size of my mitts to get in there, you need to have just a bit of patience with it, and you know, take a couple of days. If you're going to do a carburetor clean on it, take a couple of days, and it's not something. If it breaks down on, you know, out in the middle of nowhere whilst you're camping, I think pretty much it's game over, because if you haven't got the tools and the patience to get in there, then you're going to struggle. So yeah, it's a bit of a pig, but if I can do it, anyone can do it. So that's super cool. That a little tiny generator I picked up from a dump site. It was deemed as being no good. Carburetor clean, and just a little bit of love, and away it went. Super duper duper. And I'm glad I have worked on it, because I've now educated myself on it. And the more modern ones are even more compact than this. But this is a solid aluminium one. I've just tested it with my grinder as well. That's pulling about 580 watts, nearly 600 watts, and it pulls that no problem at all. It chugs away beautifully. It's not smoking, it's not doing anything, so I'm super happy. If this is your first time I watch the Micks Mowers, hit the subscribe button, whack your bell, set notifications to all. That way, if I've one done a video or two on my Saturday night weekly live stream, which starts at 6:30 PM UK time. I look forward to the next episode of Micks Mowers very soon. But until then, people, don't forget, much more importantly, take her easy.